go. Okay, so if you are listening to me speak right now too, you are part of Hamden Charter School of Science community or part of the Western New England University community too. And I thank you for logging in this afternoon and joining us for an informative, exciting hour and a half about a deep dive into the careers and majors in applied sciences. Just a thumb up, I can see 4 or 5 different people in my panel right now. I'm going to monitor the weight room in just a moment, but a thumb up if everyone can hear me okay, see me okay, and see the screen that I have okay. All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and then I'm going to pivot back to monitoring the weight room too, because I see there's a lot of people still waiting in queue. My name is Professor Ray Ostendorf, and I work over at Western New England. I'm an assistant professor of education. So I oversee the secondary ed program, and this is my 6th year at Western New England too. And I work very closely with student teachers and our student teachers who are doing both their practicum and their pre-practicum. And every now and then we have some of them over at Hamden Charter School of Science. So you might be meeting them as we speak. I think a few of them are actually in Zooms. Tuning in along with your science teachers this fall, which is pretty exciting. So the nature of our panel today is we're going to do a deep dive into careers and majors in the applied sciences. And we are quite fortunate to have a really rich variety of programs and faculty from Western New England featured here today. We have in our panel, we have Professor Nuwan De Silva. He's an assistant professor of chemistry. We have Professor Emily Ford, who's an associate professor of biology. We have Professor Neeraj Malhotra. He's the chair of the electrical and computer engineering department. And we have Professor Aaron Whitman, who's a clinical assistant professor of oncology. So we have quite a variety here. We have applied sciences, both in and out of the classroom and in many different professions too. And I'm going to step away and going to be moderating the chat features to each presenter that we have here in the panel. Has about 15 minutes to really do a deep dive and exciting exploration of their major and their program that they're representing and the profession that they're representing too. Soon I'm going to pivot over to be more of a moderator. So if you want to use the chat feature to provide questions as you're listening to the presenters, we'll field them in a break session too in between the presentations. And Mr. DeRay is going to help me out too. Is that, as everyone knows him on campus, he's the Dean of Student Services at Hamden Charter School of Science East. So the goals for the presentation today too, what each of the panelists have been thinking about doing for their particular programs and the professions they represent are to share unique qualities to the applied science profession and skills that are needed for the profession too, including thinking about it as a high school student too. And you might be in 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. It might feel, still a stretch away, but they're going to be thinking both about the profession, what you would need to be a successful professional in the applied sciences in the departments they're representing, but also thinking about what you may need in your high school career too, as you're getting ready for your junior year, your senior year, some of those prereq courses. It's never too early to start thinking about what you would like to do when you're in college and what major you might be selecting. They also will be touching on daily tasks and activities in the profession. This one could be a big selling point too, highlighting wages and salary potential too, which is especially in the applied sciences, it is a pretty exciting aspect of the profession as well. And hopefully they'll have some time within the 15 minutes just to kind of walk you through some of their personal joys and challenges to the profession too, to kind of give an insider scoop into what they experience in their clinical work before coming to Western New England, or currently too, as they are faculty members at Western New England and overseeing different departmental work. There is different joys and challenges they might want to share. And if you do have some, note paper alongside of you too, I would definitely be recording some of the tips that they're sharing too about next steps in high school too, what you might be thinking about for your senior year, and the SATs around the bend too. There are definitely some practical pieces that they will hopefully provide to you too. So the format to the Zoom, just the kind of the structure to what we're thinking about for our time together, is just some housekeeping notes, Zoom norms. It sounds like most everybody is on mute. That's great. If you're not on mute, I'm going to ask you to please go on mute unless if you have a question. Also, you can keep your camera on or off. It seems like right now there's a pretty smooth flow with all the technology, but if there's ever a glitch, we might want to shut our cameras off too so that the presenters are able to connect best with the whole group. And we're going to start off with a focus on engineering and pharmacy with Professors Malhotra and Whitman starting around a little after 2:10, going to about 2:40. And Mr. DeRay and I will moderate the time too in the chat feature just to keep sure that we're on track. And then we are thinking about breaking up two of the speakers and having a break to check in with everybody, a question and answer kind of session. And maybe if you have some individual questions that were coming up too, it'd be a terrific time to unmute and to check in with the presenters. And then the second half will be an exploration of chemistry and biology with Professors De Silva and Ford too, from about 2:50 to 3:20-ish, followed by one more break with questions and answers, and also just leading into an open forum and ways that we could all stay in touch too after we finish the panel. So that was kind of the bare bones of what we're thinking about in terms of the structure. I'm gonna leave it to the faculty that are joining me today from Western New England, my colleagues, to really go into their professional pieces too, because there's a lot of interest in the applied sciences I've heard from him and Charter School of Science students. So this would be hopefully a very useful and meaningful panel presentation. So I can see there's still some people in the wait room. Professor Malhotra might be in the mix in the wait room. Professor Whitman, are you here currently? Oh, I see her now. Okay, Dr. Whitman, we should have it set up where there's screen sharing capabilities, so you're able to share your screen as you wish. And I think I'm gonna pivot over to you while I moderate the chat feature here. And I think there's a few more students that are waiting to get on in. Are you able to get to your presentation features?
It should be up now.
Okay, so I think I have to stop my share here. There we go.
Can you see it?
Yes, yeah, it looks perfect now. Excellent.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's do that, and we'll have Dr. Malhotra go after you too. I'm gonna see if he's in the wait room.
Okay. So my name is Dr. Whitman. My specialty is oncology, which is the treatment of patients with cancer. And so my job in particular is to counsel patients who are taking oral chemotherapy at home so that they understand what it is and how to use it safely. I also do some monitoring of patients who are at home so that the doctors know if the patients are having complications from the chemotherapy when they're not in clinic with them. My other half of my job is that I teach oncology at the College of Pharmacy to students there who are learning and wanting to get into the pharmacy profession. There are many different career options in pharmacy, and I'm going to walk you through a couple of them so that you understand the more important ones that are out there. There's also some that we won't talk about as much that are definitely interesting. So if you're interested in these fields, you can always ask me about them later. But there's things like veterinary pharmacy, which we talk about a little bit in our college, but might require some extra education after you get your pharmacy license in order to practice in those types of areas. There's also people who do medical writing, continuing education credits, who don't exactly actually treat patients, but they're using their knowledge to provide education to other pharmacists or to other professions that are out there. Community pharmacy is the most common kind of pharmacy that you'll see, and it's probably what you're familiar with. So if you go to CVS, Walgreens, Walmart, and you have a prescription filled, you go to the pharmacy there. Those pharmacies are community pharmacies. The purpose of these pharmacies are to treat the community. So you're working with people who live in your area and people looking for things like prescriptions that they need to get filled. They might need to get a flu shot, which we also do in the pharmacy now. Sometimes people come because they have a question. So you found something that's over the counter at Walgreens and you're thinking about using it, but you're not sure if it's the right product. A pharmacist can help you with those kinds of questions. The thing that we do behind the counter that you don't see is that we're checking to make sure that all the prescriptions that your doctor provided you with are actually appropriate for you. So are they the right dose? Is it the right drug for you? Sometimes you have to be careful with young children because a lot of dosing is based on their body weight. And so all those things get checked before the medication even gets to you. So expectations are that you're going to oversee the pharmacy. That includes the technicians and clerks who work for you and all the medications that are supplied in the pharmacy area. Those are all your responsibility. You also have to communicate with physician offices and health insurances to make sure that patients don't have issues getting their prescriptions paid for. So these kinds of jobs are typically like 42 hours a week. You're working 10 to 12-hour shifts pretty commonly, and you will have to work some weekends and holidays. Average salary for a community pharmacist is anywhere between 110 and around 120, especially in the Massachusetts area, but can be pretty high if you're an independent contractor, you own your own pharmacy, or other special circumstances. So hospital pharmacy is not as well known. Most hospital pharmacies are in the basement of the hospital, and so you'll never see it. But in the pharmacy, we do a lot of the same things the community pharmacists do, where you're verifying prescriptions for patients who are admitted to the hospital, making sure that they're appropriate for that particular disease state or for their renal function, things like that. The unique thing that we do in the hospital that I spent a lot of time doing a few years ago is we compound infusions. So those are the medications that get put right into your arm, into your bloodstream. And so those medications are potentially very dangerous since they get right into the body. And so you have to be careful to make sure that they get made properly. And that is the job of the hospital pharmacist, to make sure that those drugs get made the correct way. So as the pharmacist there, you would be overseeing the technicians in this kind of pharmacy, checking those IV solutions, communicating with the physicians and the nurses who are on the floor to make sure that things are being given properly and answering any questions or concerns they may have. In this job, you work about 40 hours a week, some weekends and holidays, potentially overnights, because the hospital pharmacy never closes. It's always open every day, all year, because people are always sick and the hospital does not shut down. Salary is a little lower than community pharmacy, somewhere around 100,000 most commonly, but because of the fact that the companies like CVS, Walgreens, all make a considerable amount of money, they tend to pay more than what you could get from a hospital, which does not always make as much money. There are hospital clinical pharmacists, and these pharmacists are pharmacists that actually see patients on the floor. Their job is to make sure that medications are being used appropriately so that the doctors are prescribing the right medication for that disease state. If there's any special circumstances that need to be considered, they'll talk to them about it. And they may also just have suggestions. So if there's something going on and they're not 100% sure, what the right option is for the patient, there's things that we call broad spectrum drugs that can sometimes treat a lot of different diseases. And so the pharmacist may direct the team to start there and sort of work our way down into finding out what's actually wrong with the patient. So they're there just to provide advice. They don't dispense anything. They don't touch anything. All they're doing is providing knowledge that they've gotten from their education. So for these pharmacists, you work about 40 hours a week. but you don't really work on the weekends or holidays ever. So it's a little bit better in terms of that. You're usually Monday through Friday at a normal time period. Um, Salary is about almost the same as the hospital pharmacist, to maybe a little bit more at 120. But a lot of people like doing this particular position because they're not getting paid for what they're doing. You get paid for actually what you went to school for and what you know, and providing that information to other people. The one thing is, if you want to be a clinical person like myself, oftentimes you have to do training after pharmacy school in order to do those positions. And so you might have to get the doctorate in pharmacy and then also do additional training after. There's long-term care pharmacists, which are very popular. It is a requirement that pharmacists review the chart of every patient in a long-term care facility. And so they need pharmacists to make sure that the patients are on appropriate medications. Because as we get older, sometimes things are not okay for elderly patients to take. And we have to make sure that they don't get prescribed those medications. So you would be performing those drug use evaluations at your own pace. Depending on whether you're salaried or contracted, you might go to several sites per day, so you might have to travel around a little bit. And average salary is between 85,000 and 100,000. There's also careers in the federal and state government, which are very interesting, where you might be asked to be in charge of looking at information that's going on around the country and not just in your particular area. So for example, if you're working with a division of manufacturing and product quality, you're looking to make sure that the drugs are being created in a safe and effective way, not just at one particular facility, but the FDA is responsible for everybody. And so some people like these kinds of jobs because you have this big responsibility to the country to make sure that these things are being done appropriately. There are some pharmacy health inspectors, and then there's some traditional pharmacist roles that are related to the federal and state governments, like working in the prison system, working for Veterans Affairs, or even being in the uniformed services if you're interested in joining the military. Pharmaceutical industry is an area where, if you're more interested in the research and development portion, so in our curriculum, we do a lot of work in the lab with some of the faculty who have some lab training, who are capable of looking at things like how to manufacture medications, make a medication from scratch. This might be an area in which you would want to work. There's also some people that work for pharmacy industry who are more of a consultant. So sometimes people come see me at the hospital who are medical science liaisons, and it's their job to provide on. So usually they have like one drug that they're responsible for, that they're talking to people about to make sure they understand how to use it properly. So when you look at where most people go in industry, as I said, it's mostly community pharmacists, the chain pharmacists, the CVS, the Walgreens, the Walmart, because there's a lot of people in the community. So there's a lot of different community pharmacies. I'm sure you see them all over the place when you drive around. Hospital pharmacist is next, and then an independent community pharmacist, and everything sort of going down from there. So what do you have to do to get the Doctor of Pharmacy degree? So looking from where you are now, in high school, you want to make sure that you finish biology, chemistry, physics, and be calculus ready. Those particular sciences will help you be really successful in the pharmacy program. And then when you get into the pre-pharmacy program, this is a 2-year program where you complete prerequisite work for entry into the PharmD program. The Doctorate of Pharmacy program is actually 4 years of coursework, 3 years of actual learning in the classroom, and 1 year of experiential training with people like me, where you follow us around and see what we do every day so that you can kind of learn how to do those jobs in the future. After that, then you have to sit for an exam, 2 exams. The NAPLEX is to test your pharmacy knowledge, and the MPJE tests your knowledge of the medical law. So there's some admissions requirements for the pre-pharmacy program, but they do change from time to time, so they may be a little different, but they're always somewhere around in this area. With things like biology and chemistry definitely being required. So this is the pre-pharmacy curriculum that happens when you get to your freshman year of college. So there's a lot of sciences that are involved, math, and then also some social sciences that we expect too, because as a pharmacist, you do a lot of public speaking. You have to be able to get along with people and talk to people effectively. So there is some early assurance programs that are done for pre-pharmacy students at Western New England. So if you go to Western New England for your pre-pharmacy, then you can be eligible for an early assurance consideration into the Doctor of Pharmacy program. We do have some master's programs that we do, like PharmD, MBA, and there's some study abroad opportunities that have happened in the past. We'll have to see how those things happen in the future. There's many different student organizations that you can be a part of as well. And we have a pretty small class size. So I know all of my students by name. I know who they are and what they're interested in doing in the future. So that's all I have.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Professor Whitman. I'm going to go ahead and pivot over to Professor Malhotra. Is he here? He could unmute himself and turn on his. Okay, we have him here. And what we'll do is I have some notes of my own too for some discussion and questions after Professor Malhotra's presentation too. And we'll do like a 10-minute break to check in with everybody. Feel free to use the chat feature too between now and then if questions are coming up that are timely, but definitely use that during the time when we have to discuss too. So we're about to hear from Professor Malhotra, who's the chair of electrical and computer engineering here at Western New England.
Before I get rolling, could you just remind me how much time do I have?
About 15 minutes.
Oh, okay, all right. So if I'm shamelessly carrying on, you can tell me to quit. Okay, so let's see, how many students do we have? Are we allowed to ask quiz questions as you go along or not?
Yeah, feel free. We can use the chat feature, I think, as a way to facilitate that. Yeah, let me know if there's anything more that you need. The poll should be open if you want to use that too.
Okay, well, I'll try. I mean, it's funny quiz questions, so you don't have to answer for the students or attendance. Okay, so I'm Dr. Malhotra. I'm chair of electrical and computer engineering at West New England, your friendly neighborhood university, I guess. So, I've come here a long ways. I landed on the shores of this country back in the last century from a land across the globe. And quite honestly, when I was at your age, I guess in high school, I wasn't quite sure what the heck. I narrowed it down to engineering or medicine. And finally, in my biology classes, when I found that I didn't quite enjoy chopping up little cockroaches and frogs that much, I decided let's go with engineering. And so that's choice number one. Then I joined one of the top undergraduate universities back in India. And boom, I just answered my first quiz question. I was going to ask you to guess where I'm from. Anyway, so I interestingly, so I knew I wanted to be an engineer. Wasn't quite sure what kind of an engineer. So, I went in as a mechanical engineer. I came out as an electrical engineer. And to be quite honest, so for us, it was a 5-year program. And I'd seen that as 5 years of jail, educational jail, right? Because I didn't have much choice in electives. I had to study what I was told to do and so on. And quite honestly, I don't think I was an engineer when I came here to start my master's program. And fortunately for me, the main reason I actually came to the US was not so much for engineering graduate school, but more for the fact that I used to love reading about Western novels and stuff. And I really want to explore either Alaska or the Midwest. And I know for you students in the audience, uh, close your eyes and try and imagine a world without the internet. Okay, and see if you have a nightmare or a couple of nightmares. Oh my God, my smartphone doesn't work. But when I was in, finishing up my college and applying to the US and stuff, it was in the dark days before internet even was a thought in anyone's mind. So I'd found some application paperwork for Alaska and Kansas in the US consulate back in Bombay in India that might have been 10 years old. I don't know. So I copied it, filled it out, sent it in through snail mail. 3 months later, Alaska says, "Where the heck did you find this paperwork? You don't do any of that stuff anymore." So Alaska was off the table as a choice. Kansas came back and said, "Hey, we'll give you a full scholarship, etc." So I said, "Cool, I can go explore Dodge City and see, how the Wild West was." And so that's what brought me here to Kansas. Again, I won't quite date myself, but it was in the last century. And so one of the funny things in life, so my choice of ending up in Kansas was totally based on my love of Western novels. But it turned out that I ran into an academic faculty member there who really made me an engineer. So his specialty was in something we call embedded systems and signal processing. And to make it short, essentially the research that he and his team did, and then the work that I got involved in doing, is what has essentially made your life so cool now, right? It's made smartphones that have video chat capabilities possible. It's made HDTV possible. So he was my advisor. It turned out was the inventor of one of these, what we call compression algorithms. So it's like, to make your HDTV happen, where you get all these cool pictures, streaming on your phones and anywhere at any time. That's a lot of information that's coming at you through that connection. And so you have to compress a lot of this information and then decompress it at your end. So, you can hear stuff properly, you can watch stuff properly, and, and really have this experience that we cannot take for granted. So that's a little bit of a background as to, why and what brought me into engineering, in particular electrical and computer engineering. And now, of course, once I found my way, so to speak, as a true engineer, then I've really been enjoying myself. I've had a very wide and varied career. I worked in Albuquerque, New Mexico for a long time with Sandia National Labs, designing cool stuff, electronic control, so things that go boom. And then after that, I joined Texas Instruments on a more peaceful mission. So general manager of medical technology, and hopefully I don't keep talking so much I can't show you my cool video about making the blind see. And then, I wanted to combine my industrial and academic experience as well. So, and also in a cold climate, because I really don't care for heat and hot stuff. I don't understand why people from New England go to Florida in the winter for some strange reason. I think the only time Florida is livable is between Christmas and New Year's, and that's it. Okay, so I guess I should move on from this cool slide about a spaceship and talk a little bit about what we do as electrical and computer engineering. Basically, we impact almost every aspect of people's lives in these days, and almost every field, I think, known to humankind. Medical field, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, postal delivery. So for example, UPS, USPS, guess how they track all the stuff, right? It's all using our electronic technology stuff. So aerospace, aeronautics, I've just sort of highlighted some of the stuff, medical, defense, smart power, consumer electronics, a little bit of picture to show stuff. What do we mean by smart power? Well, it's we all know the importance of global warming and how the world's really got to go green. And so having alternative sources like solar, wind energy, and all kinds of other alternative sources, wave energy and so forth, it's all very cool, but there's a lot of technical issues that have to be solved. How do you take so the energy that is generated from these sources is a little different than those generated by, for example, nuclear plants and stuff. And so how do you take it and make it integratable into the grid that delivers this green energy to you at the home and stuff? So there's a lot of cool work going on along those lines. More specifically, We do a lot of control and AI stuff, power systems, wireless communication. That's how we make all these invisible waves that transfer to your smartphone and make cool data available. We design the circuits, the invisible looking chips that sit inside your cool smartphones and HDTVs and so on. All of the cars that your families use have multiple electronic computer systems embedded in them. Okay, and so on. So seriously, I mean, it's a wide variety of stuff that we impact. My passion particularly is for medical technology and how do you make people's lives better. Okay, so and I'll try and move through quickly so I can show you the cool video I've got at the end. Um, so again, keeping on, we make smartphones happen, all the stuff like Alexa and so on. And I'm not sure how many of y'all use smart speakers and so on, but they've really made lives a lot easier for in a lot of ways. Um, Beyond just entertainment, all the cool technology, medical imaging technology and such. We've made portable ultrasound systems so you can have physicians who are driving around to remote parts of, let's say, the most remote village in Maine and still have a portable ultrasound machine. So they don't have to, transfer the patient to, use a lot of expense to transfer the patient to hospital, but do ultrasound and all kinds of other imaging techniques right there in a small remote corner of Maine, for example. And obviously, this technology is valuable to other countries all across the globe now. And then electric transportation. Okay, beyond Tesla, almost all the major car manufacturers are now going in for electric cars to make, cut down emissions and such. So there's a heck of a lot of electrical and computer stuff involved in all this stuff. So if you want to make things for the betterment of humanity, definitely give my field, electrical computer engineering, due consideration. Um, I found a cool picture on the web, so I like that. So I thought I'd use this to show you how artificial intelligence makes the world smarter. Uh, a lot of the cars, the last decades have had AI in the sense that they can make your car automatically choose the best amount of gas and air mix to make your car the most efficient, whether you're going at whatever slow speed, medium speed, fast speed, and so on. And obviously now you've probably seen, if you haven't driven in a car, you've seen cars, TV ads that have all these smart cars where they have radar systems involved embedded in them. So if you're trying to back out of your drive and there's some impeding traffic coming along, it'll brake for you automatically and things like that. A lot of imaging. I've forgotten the exact statistics, but I think as of about 5-10 years ago, the statistic of kids who would get hurt because their own family cars would backhoe them in the driveway because they weren't visible to the driver was horrendous. And so now a lot of these cars have all kinds of almost 360 degree of vision. And so you can see exactly what the scene is behind you as you're backing out, for example. The other thing that we are responsible for is making the Internet of Things happen. All that means is basically all of us are, if you have a smartphone, you're part of the IoT, right? You're connected. You could actually be talking to your friend in some Chinese university or Chinese school, for example, and so on. That's essentially, in a nutshell, what the IoT is about. Okay, so why do you want to go to engineering school? So I don't know, do you have audio for the students to chime in? I have a question as to what does this make you think, this picture?
Overwhelmed.
Any student?
Yeah, I agree.
This is what engineering is
Feel
about.
overwhelmed.
Perfect. Perfect. So see, yeah, so I don't want to lie to you, it does take a lot of math, physics skills. And, we've been telling our incoming freshman class that, hey, if you do some AP calculus particularly, and maybe physics in high school, we can show you a pathway where you can get your engineering degree with us in 3 years and, get a master's degree in 4 years.
Clear.
So in 3+1, you can get a bachelor's and a master's. Now, I don't mean to scare you, but if you come to school with us, anyone know what this is? Any of the students?
Isn't that the Rosetta Stone?
Yep. I'm sorry. See, if I was there in person, I'll be throwing Toblerone gift candies at you guys for answering the questions. But, I'll have to save it for when the pandemic is done. So the Rosetta Stone, the analysis or the similarity here is that you come to us, we take all this gobbledygook that I showed you up here on the blackboard, and we make it crystal clear to you. Okay, so we'll make you the world's best electrical and computer engineers in our programs. Quick pitch about our program itself, so we have 2 ABET accredited programs, electrical and computer. As I mentioned, normally these are 4-year programs and we can get you into a +1 MSEE degree. But if you come in with some AP credits, and I'll be glad to work with your high school counselors and such to show them exactly what we can, help you all do to come in and finish up with us in 4 years with a master's degree. Uh, Plenty of full-time faculty members. And one thing we are very proud of in our department is you have a very high placement rate within 3 to 6 months of commencement. That being said, it also means that you have to work with us on this, right? In other words, if you're willing to just, you don't just graduate and we hand you a job, right? You work with us through your 4 years with us. We help you get internships. That's how you really get to learn. Maybe I enjoy computer engineering more or electrical engineering more, or I enjoy, RF wireless more or building circuits more and so on. And that also gives companies a feel for, how much they like you and your work ethics. A lot of our students come back after the internship at the end of the junior year, which is the 3rd year, with a job offer. So we place a lot of students into leadership programs in companies like BAE, General Dynamics, Texas Instruments, ISO New England, and a lot of smaller companies all across New England and the US, for instance. Typical starting salaries, depending on, the size of the company and so on, can be anywhere from the upper 60,000s into the mid 70,000s. And if you get into the leadership employment, like for example, BAE, you could be making, the high 70,000s or getting into, almost touching 80,000 with a bachelor's degree. So if you graduate the master's degree, you obviously get a start at a much, at a higher, maybe above 80,000 a year kind of a salary rate, if you will. We have a lot of ties with the industry. That's how we help our students get internships. And we do believe in collaborating with other departments across, not just in the College of Engineering, across our campus, but also with other universities and stuff. Student activities, we have a lot of different clubs. We have the IEEE has a micromouse competition where you basically design a smart, essentially we call it a micromouse because it's a small robot that you have to build in the algorithmic smart so it can solve a maze. And the last time, I believe the competition we entered was last year. 2020 was canceled because of the pandemic. It's usually held in the spring. And I'm not sure it's going to happen in spring of 2021 either, unless we try and do it somehow on a remote basis. The other thing also is that our ME department builds and drives, excuse me one second. Okay. Sorry about that. So the other thing is, the MEs, we work with the ME department. They build all the mechanics of this Baja car. You can see, the part of the competition is we drive through these really nasty, muddy terrains. You can see this is after a run. We can barely see the difference between the car and the driver. But the way the electrical computer guys get involved is our students, senior projects, they work with the Baja team and they designed an electronic variable transmission control system for this car. Okay, so I tell people that when you get out in the real world, you'll be working on a team, an engineering team, basically. So we try and give you as much of a cross-disciplinary experience as well, while you're still studying with us in our program and such. Hang on. Okay. Give me 1 second. Richie, I'll call you back in a few minutes. Sorry, okay, bye. Okay, sorry about that again. So that's, so going from something that's a micro, this fits kind of sort of in the palm of your hand, kind of a device, to something that you're actually driving around. We get involved in all kinds of cool experiments and so on. And how am I doing on time? Do you have I'm sorry, you're muted. I can't.
Probably another about 2 minutes, and we've got a few questions coming up in the chat. So maybe about two,
Right.
3 more minutes.
This is perfect because this
we'll
is it. This
segue.
is about a 2-minute or less video. So this shows you, so while I was at Texas Instruments, I was the general manager of the medical technology group. We also worked with a lot of universities on advanced research. And this is related to something we worked with the University of Southern California, which I believe put out the world's first artificial retina. And the video I'm about to show you is kind of dated. So the technology is even more advanced than that. But let me just run the video for you and let it speak for itself.
No one expects.
Are you seeing that? suddenly struck me, maybe I need to change my share options or,
Yeah, you should be able to. I think if you take the PowerPoint down and go to the, yeah, and then now find the source of the video and play it that way.
there you go.
Okay, and then share screen once again.
Grandma to play like a professional.
Okay, is that coming through?
No, not yet.
But Belinda more proof that any ball
Shoot.
goes in.
Okay, I'll give it one more try. Okay, there we go.
Is amazing. She's totally
Is that coming through now?
It's perfect. Yeah, we can see
Okay.
it now and hear it.
No
Okay.
one expects grandma to play like a professional, but Belinda more proof that any ball goes in is amazing. She's totally blind. The small circle in her glasses is a camera, and some clever electronics turn the images into patterns of dark and light. It may not sound like much, but for Linda, it's made a huge difference.
Instead of having to listen for what's around me or who's around me, or to feel what's around me or who's around me, I can actually see them again.
So how does her eye implant work? It's designed for people who are blind because light receiving cells in the retina are damaged. An implant is attached to the retina to bypass the damaged cells. Images from the camera are sent to a processing unit and onto a receiver behind the ear. They are then transmitted along a wire under the skin to electrodes on the implant. That sends pulses along the optic nerve to the brain, where they're turned into patterns of light. When the first operation was carried out, no one knew just how the eye would respond. But now a new trial is set to begin, with 50 to 100 patients and a new improved implant.
I have a vertical black bar just on the wall. So what you do is scan your head back and forth, and just point the object in the time.
Linda's sight is rudimentary. Scientists can't be sure exactly what she's seeing. Here, the computer gives some idea. Each circle represents one of the 16 electrodes on the implant. With 60 electrodes, the new implant should provide much better definition like this.
We hope that'll provide orientation type vision, allow these subjects to not bump into tables, chairs, be able to know where the doors are, where the window is, be able to even recognize the overall form of a person.
Okay, so it's like I said, it's a little dated video, but there's it's worth pointing out they talk about 16 sensors, 60 sensors. They probably have now sensed with about 100 plus sensors and so on. Technology has evolved at a pretty quick clip. So that video is, I'm guessing, over 10 years old, right? So that
It's still certainly useful. We have a few questions coming up in
Okay.
the chat feature. I will try to get caught up with it too, and we'll take about 5 to 10 minutes now for Q&A, both for Professor Whitman and Professor Malhotra. One of the students had asked, there's just a few housekeeping type of questions. We are recording the Zoom, so it will be available through Mr. Dure too, so Hampton Charter School of Science students can access it. We have a question from Antonio Zambrana. Antonio, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question that was on the chat? Let's see. Yeah, there may be some audio things going on. He said, is there any specific requirements you need to meet to be accepted to Western New England in the program that you're representing? I think this is for Professor Malhotra.
Yeah, in the good old days, the pre-pandemic, they had certain rules about high school GPA and SAT scores and stuff. Anymore, given the pandemic, I think, and I can check with our associate dean and get better information back to your faculty, but I believe they're going test optional So going more based on your high school GPA. So as long as you have a good high school GPA, you know, it's something that would get you into the program. And as I mentioned, if you've got AP credits and stuff, you can always speed up your progress through the program. So we'll be glad to give you more information through your faculty on that.
Okay, he might try to connect with you too. I just got another message that he's logged out, but he's coming, or he's lagged. He's logged out, but he's coming back in.
Okay.
There was a question about the video from Allison. She was asking, is what we were watching, is that embedded in the human eye? She wanted, I guess, a little bit more information about what she was watching a short time ago with the technology that we're seeing that supported the person there.
Yeah, you know, it sounds gory, but yes, not all of it. So for example, the tiny camera was embedded in, so the tiny camera was in her dark sunglasses that she had on. Then there was a wireless transmitter taking that video data into the artificial retina. So there's a device that's inside the eyeball that receives that RF signal coming in and then transmits it to the implant. So there's a piece, the electrode array is literally, I don't know, you know, it's just past Halloween. So you literally ram that onto the retina. Okay, so think about it like, I mean, probably every one of you have seen like the bed of nails, and then these ancient gurus and stuff can lay down on the bed of nails, right, without killing themselves. So think of that implant being like, you know, bunch of sensors on a bed of nails that gets put into the retina because it has to make contact with the nerves, the optic nerve bundle. So that's how the electronic signals get transmitted through the optic nerves to the brain. And then the point that they made is it might not be sight like you and I see things. So it's a pretty difficult task for the therapist to try and figure out, because you've got to understand that she is not seeing what you're seeing. Okay, she might just be seeing, especially back in those days with the early implants, she might just be seeing squares of white and dark, you know, but the fact that she was shooting hoops, so the one way that they would test people is have them do different activities, and then based on how they perform, they could tell, are they seeing well enough or not? But yes, stuff is really inside the eye. So a lot of miniaturized electronics and so on inside the skull and inside the eyeball. Yep.
Okay, I hope that answers Allison's question. And we have a question from Brian from Hamden Charter School of Science. He says, is this tech from the video possible if someone hasn't developed an optic nerve? Brian was born without developing an optic nerve in his right eye, and was really interested in the video he just saw with you.
Honestly, I would be very glad to forward that question to my contacts at these schools and get an answer from them. I honestly do not know what the state of the art is at this point, but I will be very glad if you can have your question forwarded to me. I will get you an answer.
Yeah, we can archive the chat too, just to capture some of these questions and be sure to get them to you and to Dr. Whitman too. Any questions for Professor Whitman representing oncology and pharmacy too? She was our first presenter too, and we're about to pivot over to our next two presenters, and we'll have an open forum for discussion and questions towards the end of our last two presenters. But anything about our pharmacy program too?
What are the qualifications to get into pharmacy for like the veterinary thing?
I didn't hear the end of your question.
What are the qualifications to get into veterinary pharmacy?
So you just need the doctorate in pharmacy in order to do that. However, we don't do a lot of education on veterinary medicine in the PharmD program. So I know in our curriculum, we have one class which addresses veterinary medicine. So in order to do it, most people would have to do some sort of postdoctoral training, whether that's a residency or a fellowship. Down at one of the schools. I know one is like in Georgia or something like that, where you would actually get that training to be able to do that.
My bad for earlier. I was lacking having internet connection issues. But like what I was asking before, I was questioning on like the requirements you need to meet for actually getting into the program because I was unsure if the program only provides like the prereqs for it. So like I would be going into like the nursing program and doing all the requirements. And I was like asking if it goes straight to like the next program or do I have to look for another school and apply through a different school?
Are you talking about for pharmacy?
I was talking for like the physician assistance program.
That actually may be a great question for Professor Ford, who's one of the next presenters who's coming up too, because I think she also is teaching a few courses in our health sciences area too. Is that correct, Professor Ford, or do we have you logged in still?
Yeah, I'm still here, and I'm happy to address it. We do have a pre-physician assistant program. So this is, you would come to Western New England for 3 years, and you have to enter into that program in the same way as with our pre-pharmacy program, right? So you have to enter in the pre-physician assistant program when you start. It has similar entrance requirements to the pre-pharmacy program. And then we have an articulation agreement with a couple of physician assistant programs. So we have an articulation agreement with Salus University, which is in Pennsylvania, and Bryant University, which is in Maine, I think. Maybe I can't quite remember that one is. So in either case, you would do 3 years at Western New England. And if you're successful during those 3 years, you were sort of granted an automatic interview at those schools. And then if you get into their programs, you would transfer in there and you would do 2 years of physician assistant at one of those 2 schools. And so by the time you're done with that 5 years, they actually transfer credits back to you after you complete your first year at either Bryant or Salus, and that completes your health sciences degree from Western New England. So you would have a bachelor's in health sciences, and then you would complete 1 additional year with either of those programs, and you would have a master's in physician assistant, which is sort of the next stage that you would need. And then there are some practical licensing exams that you have to take that vary by state. So we don't offer the physician assistant part directly at Western New England, but we do have a sort of a direct pathway if you choose to take it into those programs elsewhere.
All right, thank you very much.
So I think that's actually a really good segue to the second half of our panel. We have Professor De Silva and Professor Ford, who represent chemistry and biology. And I don't know, between the 2 of you, if one of you has a preference to go first, and we'll do the same type of thing where we have about 15 minutes per presenter, and then we're getting a little close on time, but we'll have a final Q&A. And this could also lead into other ways that we could network too, perhaps giving our contact information to Mr. DeRay, and he could be a connector with some individual students and questions with each of us too, as a way to be sure we're very thorough with the questions that you all have, and the chat's starting to get a little bit more active too, which is pretty exciting. So between Professor Ford, Professor De Silva, would either of you like to go next?
My apologies, I need to log out, but I'll put an offer on the table. I'll be willing to command performance at any time for your students. So just, it could be a little less formal. I'll be glad to join you at any point.
It's terrific. Thank you so much,
Thank
Professor
you.
Malhotra. Thank you.
I'll go first. Right. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's screen sharing capabilities if you need it too.
All right. So I'll go first.
Sure.
All right. So I got only one slide. How about that? This is Noan De Silva. I'm the assistant professor at Western New England. This is my 4th year at the university. What a blessing university this is. I really like my job. That's all I want to say first. First of all, long time ago, when I was at high school, I did not like chemistry. I really don't like chemistry. I'm a very hardworking student, really hardworking student, and I did not get chemistry. The concepts, it's so much heavy, it's so much burden for my head. So I really didn't like it eventually. I like something like biology and zoology, that kind of a subject, but chemistry is not my thing when I was at high school. But at the end of the very end of the high school, I met a tutor, and who happens to be a film director also. I got lessons from him, and all of a sudden, wow, I realized this is very cool. I can get it. It comes very simply to my brain. Everything come to my brain very simply, and I got it. From that moment, then I went to the university. I did really well in university chemistry. That's where I got the motivation, university, where when I look back, if I think about I'll end up in chemistry in high school, I cannot imagine that such a thing. But the university, the moment I spent the university life, I really like what I did. And from there, I got my bachelor's degree, special degree in chemistry, way back in Colombo, Sri Lanka. And then I came to US and did my master's degree in 2 years. Then I didn't stop there. I called my mom and say, Mom, I'm going to do a PhD. She asked, why? You got the master, why you're doing a PhD? Then I got a PhD. This is my first, in my family generation, I'm the first one to got a PhD. Same thing along with my wife, she got a PhD too in chemistry. So then after that, I had a desire to become a professor. Why? The whole motivation is I want students to learn chemistry in a very simple, enjoyable manner, the way I learned in high school. So I want to give that experience for them, so they will enjoy and motivate and do great things. So in order to become a professor, you got not only you got to do a PhD, you had to do some postdoc research work or teaching work. So I did the postdoc research work at the Ames laboratory, and 4 years of postdoc, and did some teaching also. After that, I got this job, and I really like it. I like it so much. So I'm doing quantum mechanics and thermodynamics. That's my area of study. So I don't like to go to the lab and do experiments because I cannot do it, because I'm so messy with doing experiments. I spill things and I messed up things. So I really like to sit and derive equations, derive the Schrodinger equations, and write into the code and run calculations on my office. So it's so theoretical and abstract work, but that's the thing I enjoy. And my teaching, this semester I teach quantum mechanics to students, and the next semester I teach thermodynamics and kinetics. On the other hand, I will do research with students too. For an example, three research students with me. One student is designing lithium-ion batteries. So batteries, development of looking into the development of lithium-ion batteries. So where we simulate the parts of the batteries and design those aspects. And also another student is looking into the protein folding. We looked into the mad cow disease and see why there's a protein misfolding happens, and what kind of energy barrier involved in those misfolding, and also some other great stuff. So we got to do research also. I'm in the tenure track process. This is in the professor. So it's hard to get a tenure track job, to be honest with you. It's very competitive to get into get a tenure track. I feel like nobody can fire you if you get a tenure track job. That's my thinking. So first 5 years, you got to publish papers and do excellence in teaching and do service to the university, then they will evaluate and they will put into you to the associate professor, like your Professor Ostendorf is associate professor. Then after that, another few years, you get the full professor, like Dr. Ford and the Dr. McGraw. Now they are done. I mean, they are like full professor. I'm a kind of assistant professor. But there's still, we are going on that track. So I just want to show you this one single slide. Chemistry is so important that you can really develop the chemical, in terms of chemistry, you can develop some transferable skills either in high school or when I highly recommend you go to college and develop these skills like analysis, problem solving, and time management and organizing skills, which are really important in any discipline. Then build up your teamwork. So for an example, biology, biochemistry, so medicine. I want to know students, couple of students, what your favorite in this picture. Which discipline would you like to go? Any?
Students, if you want to unmute yourselves or use the chat feature to chime in, there's a whole menu that Professor De Silva has offered there too. And I think his question was which of these.
If you tell me a discipline, I'll take you there.
What was the question again?
What on this picture? What is the discipline you like the most? You have the biology, biochemistry, medicine, nuclear chemistry, physics. For an example, my favorite is the quantum mechanics part right here.
Nuan, I don't know if you can see the chat, but there's a lot of, we're having 3 or 4 biologies, 1 physics, another biology. So we're getting ready for Professor Ford in a little bit. Right? See your thumb up. Medicine, health sciences. So we're starting to see that appear too. Christina and Allison just chimed in. Arzu said medicine. So,
wow, that's great. Yeah, very nice. So for an example, in my class, there are chemistry majors and also forensic science majors, forensic chemistry students, and also biomedical engineering students who are taking this class, physical chemistry class. So they are enjoying this class. You need to build up these transferable skills from the college level and go to this discipline, whatever your favorite. So do your favorite discipline, then you will succeed. In our discipline, I would say annually one can raise 100,000 $100,000 per year as an average salary, Western New England. It depends on the discipline, I would say. Some are very demanding. For an example, nuclear chemistry is a very hot topic. Okay, so that's all I have.
Okay, thank you for that. I think what we'll do then is pivot over to Professor Ford to be sure she has plenty of time too. And thanks to Professor De Silva's poll, we see there's actually a very vested audience here. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6 biology students here, people who have at least expressed interest in that too. So I think it's going to be particularly helpful and useful. I'm going to go ahead and mute.
You're muted, Ray.
I just was saying, so I'm about to mute myself too. I did it maybe 2 minutes too early there. And I think that we have the screen sharing capabilities over there too, if you need it.
I made some slides just for fun. Just to kind of help you think about like areas where biology can be applied. So I'm Dr. Ford. I'm an associate professor of biology here at Western New England. And this is my 7th year here. So I've been here for a little while. I teach a bunch of different things. My undergraduate degree is actually in environmental science and ecology. So I used to do a lot of things focused on the environment and thinking about that aspect of biology, because biology is a really huge field that encompasses the entire study of life. So you could use that to focus on, right, ecology, wildlife, plants and animals, you know, health of the environment, or you could be more focused on, right, human health, being interested in medicine, or things along those lines. So this is a pretty broad idea of thinking about biology as a whole. So I started my career sort of thinking about the environment mainly. And when I finished my undergrad degree, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a bachelor's degree and I just didn't really know what I wanted. So I actually worked for 4 years. I did a year of AmeriCorps, which is sort of like the national version of the Peace Corps. And I did habitat restoration. So I worked on improving the environment out in Western Washington. And then I went back and got my graduate degree. And so my graduate degree is actually in molecular biology. So I went from thinking about the environment to thinking about like DNA and what's happening inside your cell. And so what I actually study research-wise is toxicology. So I kind of mesh with a lot of chemistry and also pharmacy. So I'm mostly interested in like environmental contaminants and what they do to organisms that are exposed to them. So whether that's thinking about like humans who are drinking water with arsenic in them, or fish who are swimming around in a stream that has, you know, some pharmaceuticals in it, right? That's what I study. So I have kind of a big, broad interest. So I put together just some basic slides that I'm showing you guys here because biology is just huge. And so it's an option that gives you lots of different things that you could do as a career. So you could think about a career in health sciences, whether that's nursing or physician assistant, pharmacy, or whether you're thinking about going to medical school, right, which is very challenging to do. You could think about, you know, ecology and environmental science. You know, a biology degree could be a pathway to becoming, right, someone who works for the National Park Service or U.S. Fish and Wildlife, or things along those lines. So there's lots of layers of biology. So you could think about how organisms develop. You could think about the whole organism. You could think about anatomy, right? So this is, again, a really degree, and they do so in biology, and then they might get a job as a lab technician working in a lab. We have a bunch of students actually this year who graduated from Western New England last year who are working in Boston in some of the labs that are doing a bunch of the COVID testing that we're all seeing right now. So they're handling biological samples and using things that they learned at Western New England to do that. We have some students who go on to veterinary school or who choose to pursue careers as vet techs. We also have a pretty robust forensic science program here at Western New England. So we have pathways in forensic biology and forensic chemistry. So those who are interested in, you know, working in a forensics lab. I am going to just, you know, give you the little caveat that there's a lot of options here. Some types of programs would require a graduate degree, right? So if you're interested in pharmacy, as Dr. Whitman already told us, right, you would need to not only start an undergraduate degree, but complete a doctorate in pharmacy. Other types of jobs you could get right straight with a bachelor's degree and would give you a bunch of options that way. So salary range is going to be huge and widely varied depending on what you're talking about. So someone who is a lab technician with just a bachelor's is, you know, maybe a little bit on the lower end of the spectrum, probably in the, depending on whether you're here in Western Mass or in Boston, right, could be anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 a year. If you go on and get a master's degree or a doctorate, right, that's going to push your earning potential higher in these various fields. So it's hard. The salary question is a tough one to answer because, you know, the difference between being a wildlife biologist and, you know, a pharmacist is pretty large. But biology would be a starting place. So what can you do with biology, right? Thinking about all of this, there's tons of things, right? There's so many different ways to think about this. Science is really about asking and answering questions. And so if you like a good puzzle, science might be a good career for you. If you get frustrated easily because things don't work right all the time, then maybe not so much sciences, because there's a lot of trial and error and thinking about what does work and what doesn't work, and understanding that. So, there's lots of different options. You could, become a science teacher, or you could become a researcher. You could, work outside. If you love to be outside, wildlife biology might be for you. So there's just so many options available to you. And so one of the really great things at Western New England that we promote is the idea, again, of students doing internships so they can get some experience with whatever it is they think they might be interested in. For those of you earlier who are expressing interest in like medicine and health sciences, whether you're thinking about nursing or PA school or medical school, one of the things that's common to all of those is the need for patient contact hours. And so shadowing doctors or doing an internship can be a great way to do those things. It can also be a great way to figure out things that you don't like to do, right? So I recently, a couple of years ago, had a student who thought she wanted to go into physical therapy, and she was just convinced that this is what she wanted to do. And then she did an internship and she shadowed a physical therapist, and she came back to my office and she was like, Dr. Ford, I don't want to be a physical therapist. And I was like, okay, well, that's great, because you figured that out now. And now we have room for you to think about what you want to do, what else you want to do with this skill set you had. So that can be a really important part of this. So we have a lot of degrees in our department. So in biological and physical sciences, which is the department that I'm in, and also Dr. De Silva, these are all the degree options that we have. So we have biology, health sciences, health studies. We have the 2 forensic ones, either focused on biology or chemistry. We have a chemistry degree, and then we have all these pre-programs. So the pre-pharmacy program feeds into our pharmacy school here. So Dr. Whitman talked about that a little bit earlier. And then we have the pre-physician assistant program, which I talked about a little bit earlier as well. But we also have a pre-optometry program, which works very similarly to the pre-physician assistant program, in that you would do 3 years here at Western New England, and you would have sort of a guaranteed interview with the New England College of Optometry, which is in the Boston area, and then, the potential to go to optometry school there. So those are sort of connections that we already have. All of the pre-programs have a few more specific requirements in terms of admissions that I would be happy to talk to anybody about if they have specific questions. And I see all these questions in the chat, and I'll work my way back to them. So the one thing I want to leave you with is, well, if any of this sounds interesting to you, what do you need to think about now? So for all of our programs, you need to have, we call it 1 unit, but that's really basically usually a year of chemistry and a year of biology. You need some English, right? Writing skills are important. You need at least 3 years of math. For some of our programs, you actually need 4, right? So we want you to come in with those kind of quantitative skills. So for some of our programs, being calculus ready is more important, and in other programs, we can get you caught up to that. And then a year of US history is sort of a general requirement for the College of Arts and Sciences. So we do need, you do need some background in this. So these are things to keep in mind. I can now work my way through some of these questions in the chat. Did I stay on time, Ray?
Yeah, you're perfect. We can segue right into sort of a Q&A if everyone's okay with that, with Professor Ford, Professor De Silva, if that's fine with you both. We're right at the right time too. It's about 3:15. we could do a final Q&A and just sort of an open discussion forum too for the remaining time that we have.
Do you want me to go back and answer the chat questions?
Can you access them from where you are?
I can see them.
Okay, yeah, either way, I'm happy to moderate it too, but yeah, there was a lot that came up in your presentation too about a lot of specific classes the student should be taking in high school too. So yeah, feel free to chip away at them there.
Yeah, sure. So Rebecca asked about marine biology. If you're interested in marine biology, you still want to take the same basic, right? So a solid year of high school biology, a solid year of high school chemistry, and good math foundations will put you into the right category. I actually originally was a marine biology major in my undergrad as well. So the other thing to think about is if you have something really specific in mind, right? Looking at the programs that you're interested in. So we don't really have marine biology here at Western New England, being that Springfield is a little bit landlocked for that. But if you're looking at a particular program right in Boston, right, so look at their requirements to ensure that you are meeting them. But definitely a year of chem, a year of bio, and multiple years of math are going to be a general requirement for almost any kind of science program that you're interested in. Okay, forensic sciences. Which classes would be best to take in advance? So it's kind of the same answer. So some schools offer like an intro to forensic science kind of class, and that's a great course to take just to see if you're even interested in forensic sciences. Sometimes I feel like CSI has given everyone this idea that we can have answers in 30 minutes or less. And unfortunately, that's not really how science works. So a forensic science class can be a great way to figure out if that's something you're really interested in. But if not, right, chemistry, biology, math, if you have options to take AP courses, those are always a fantastic way to either prepare for college or to take care of some of your college courses before you even get here. Like it never hurts to be a little bit ahead in that realm.
Just because of you said forensic science, I just want to show something. So this is what I was doing just before this meeting. This is called the FTIR, Fourier transform infrared. This is a gas cell. You can analyze the gases. For an example, this is very expensive. It's $10,000. This is a gas cell. It's like a missile. So what you can do is you can analyze gases. So I am trying to design an experiment. So the motivation is this. So the dog can sniff far away gunpowders and maybe bombs and certain things. So they can smell these gases. So I'm trying to identify the gases and maybe collect some gunpowders, maybe collect some bomb pieces, and collect the vapor, put into a Ziploc bag and collect the vapor and analyze with this and see what's going on and see what are the things dog can understand and what are the things this instrument can understand. Just want to show you, just before this meeting, I was in a hurry to analyze this one, so I can excite the forensic science students that there are so many things you can do. All right.
I see one more question in the chat that I can answer about the pre-programs, whether they are, Christina, 5 years or 4 years. So they vary a little bit. So the pre-pharmacy program is you do 2 years of undergraduate here at Western New England, and then you would transfer to the pharmacy school here, and then it's 4 more years to get your PharmD. So that one's a total of 6. The pre-physician assistant is 5 total. So 3 years here at Western New England and then 2 years at the PA school. Pre-optometry, I can't remember if that's a 3 years at Western New England and then 3 years of optometry school, or it's a 3. I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but it's at least a 3 years here and 2 years there. It might be a 3. I can't quite remember.
If you don't mind me asking, it's a very like late question. It was for forensics. Um, for forensics, what do you handle there? Do you like actually handle the stuff from investigations and stuff?
As a career or in your classes?
I think both.
So as a career, a lot of our forensic science students go on to work in the crime lab. So they might be, it depends on if you're interested in sort of the biology or the chemistry end of it. So the biology could be looking at DNA samples and analyzing, right, do they match between a suspect and a crime scene, or analyzing like hair follicles, sometimes looking at bugs and decomposition, things like that. So, and on the chemistry side would be more what Nuan was describing, like looking at trace contaminants. I'll let you keep going instead of me.
This is fine, yeah.
In your courses, here at Western New England, you would have maybe not actual crime scene materials that you're going to work with, but we do a lot of work to set up good opportunities for you. So for example, one of the forensic biology upper level labs is trying to, match DNA samples. And a couple of years ago, the professor who was teaching it brought in, her daughter's toothbrush and hairbrush, and then had gotten samples from herself and her husband and had the students try to do sort of like matching of DNA. So you will work with real world kind of samples, so you understand the challenges of those samples in the world. And so I think we have our forensics faculty are pretty fantastic at trying to make it the best experience for you. In either of those programs, forensic chem or forensic bio, you have to either complete an internship, do research, or do some kind of independent study. So again, you get the opportunity to really see what that career looks like. So sometimes our students intern with the mass crime lab or other opportunities that give them that sort of chance to see what this career is really like before they're through.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question kind of and a comment, I think, that ties everything together, because I know at Hampton Charter School of Science, there's a lot of extracurricular involvement, and there's a lot of really early readiness for a lot of the majors that we're exploring today too, which is quite exciting. Maybe Mr. Durek, could you maybe review just briefly some of the extracurriculars that are available? Because I know Hampton Charter School of Science students are especially positioned to be well prepared for these type of majors and programs. I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a forensic science course offered at the high school level that kind of introduces these type of skills very early on. And there's a robotics club already in place. And we've had a lot of Hampton Charter School of Science students over here for the pharmacy camp with Professor Whitman. So yeah, I don't know, is there any sort of programmatic things that tie this all together too, Mr. Dure over at Hampton Charter School that are helpful to highlight?
Right. Again, I would definitely suggest the students to check out curriculum 2. Again, we have very strong science programs, including forensics this year. We also offer the AP classes. I mean, I definitely offer recommend those kind of those classes to the students who's interested in biology, chemistry, or health science to take have the affiliation with STIC or ACC. Again, the student can definitely go to those kind of colleges and then go and experience a college level. Meaning the extracurriculars for now. But again, hopefully they will be available soon, including the robotics club, many other extracurriculars too.
This is great. Well, I think at some point too, we should connect the individual faculty with some of the clubs and maybe some of the students that are majoring in those areas and are involved with those clubs at Western New England with the Hampton Charter School of Science students too. We've talked about that, and I know there's some traction being built there in our partnership too to help to help kind of the college students meet the high school students and maybe also relate their own experiences back to them too, which can be, I think, another helpful story to hear from. So we're just about at 3:25, 3:26. Are there any other student questions that might be good to highlight here? Again, if you want to use the chat feature to ask, or if you want to unmute yourself too, if you'd rather not type it, feel free at this time.
So let's say that we wanted to take multiple classes. We're allowed to take multiple classes at once, right? Like we could take a class with biology and one with chemistry at the same time? Or is it just
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. Just a quick comment now. See, you are at the end of the high school career, and when we say, oh, you got to do this one, 2 years of that one, PhD, master's, or whatever, it feels overwhelming right now for you. You're thinking about, oh my goodness, you've got to study a lot. But see, the moment I went to the college, I really liked that experience. It's so much different than the high school. So the moment you like it, you don't feel the time passing. Quick comment.
I think, oh my.
You muted yourself again.
There we go. My apologies too. There is, I think, a little internet instability over here. I'm in Emerson Hall at Western New England, which is the oldest building. So sometimes there's a little bit of a flicker from time to time there too. But I heard a part of what Professor Nguyen was saying too is that you're drawn to certain courses and it doesn't become so laborious too because you lose yourself in the passion that you have for your interests. And I'm sure already as a high school student, you're sensing kind of your pathway too. There's some courses you're naturally drawn to, and there's some that you're like, oh, okay, I need to do this just so I can get to that stage where I'm walking, getting my diploma and waving to my folks and my family. I see you nodding too. So I'm imagining you're connecting with certain classes already, and maybe some of the faculty over here are future faculty that you'll see at Western New England one day too. So that's terrific. And I hope this was especially meaningful for you. Okay, are there any other questions too? We're almost at 3:30. Maybe I'll wait another 10, 15 seconds and then just do a few housekeeping items just to wrap things up here. Okay. All right, well, I want to thank Professor Magotra, Professor Whitman, Professor De Silva, and Professor Ford for volunteering their time to come and present and to share their passions for their content areas and to walk us through a little snapshot into their careers and their professional pathways. I'd like to thank Mr. Dore too for helping coordinate this too and carrying the end of it over there at Hampton Charter School of Science. And I want to thank all the students too. I recognize this is probably getting towards the end of your school day and we're all plugged in so much over Zoom. This is for some of you, maybe your 5th or 6th hour doing this kind of stuff too. So I recognize that and want to thank you for that. And thank you for your great questions and discussions. I still see even a late question came up in the chat. So what I'll do is I'll archive these questions too, and I can share a few of them to the presenters to be sure that there's no stone left unturned there too. There's one late arriving question. And this is all recorded too, so that everyone can access this later on too. Mr. Dure will have it over at Hampton Charter School and hopefully distribute it to some students who wanted to attend but were unable. And I'm sure your family members may also want to know a little bit about these majors and these programs that are offered at Western New England. So that's another option, another group that certainly could have this information too. Okay, well, once again, thank you everybody for your time and your attention, and our lovely presenters too, and our panelists. And yeah, we'll be trying to do maybe one more of these coming up too for Hampton Charter School of Science students. Potentially, I've heard there's a lot of interest also in criminal justice, which is a huge department here at Western New England, and psychology. and occupational therapy. So we're thinking about doing a second panel like this too, with a human service or a human science focus. This was more of an applied science focus. So be staying tuned for that. And I'll be working with Mr. DeRay to coordinate that probably in a couple of weeks before Thanksgiving. So once again, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. And thanks again to our presenters.
Thank
Thank you all the presenters too.
Ray, if students have follow-up questions, you can feel free to give out my email. It's fine. I don't mind to answer them.
Okay, yeah. I will. There was, I think, a few that literally were for you too. Someone said it's health sciences and health studies.
Oh, studies, yeah.
Yeah.
You can feel free to give out my email if they have questions about our specific programs. I'm happy to answer those, and when I can't, shuttle them off to who can. So
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Emily. Actually, just related to that too, I don't know if you have Corey Rizzo or Danny Hamill in any of your classes, but we have an interesting uptick in secondary ed bio this year too. And some of them are actually doing student teaching and pre-practicum over at Hamden Charter School of Science. So it's kind of nice to see everything come full circle here. And you don't often get to see what you all do over there too. So I was learning quite a bit about all the layers to the department that you have. It's one of the largest departments at our university too, right? So there's a lot of,
I think we are the largest. Yeah, we have like 32 faculty members and 9 degree programs. So we are quite large. Yeah, I do see some of the secondary ed, but I don't have any of the, I'll have a couple of the like junior secondary ed science majors this spring, but I have all freshmen this semester. So
yeah.
I have all the incoming pre-pharmacy students right now.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm happy to help answer questions or shuttle them off to Alex or admissions, as I can't answer them because people always ask me eventually things I can't answer.
So, Ray, do you